Responding.
We're muted in two places. Okay, my apologies. We're going to start this over again. Resetting my brain. Okay.
Sorry,
so,
we love do-overs. We're going to talk about do-overs today, aren't we, Dean?
Yes, we are. Do-overs. So what just happened is a nice little learning experience for all of us, especially me. You can mute your own microphone through Zoom, as well as if you have a hardware mic that has a mute, you can do the same thing. So you can be muted in two different places, which is exactly what I just embarrassingly did. So thank you all for hanging on for 5 minutes and watching me speak and not hearing me. All right, we're going to start over. So we are being recorded. So please don't include any confidential patient health information during the session. I'm going to go back a couple of slides here real quick. So if you do wish to receive CME or CEU certificate, please announce your name here in just a minute, or you can use the chat box at any time. And your lower left-hand corner of your Zoom screen, you can stop or start your video and mute your microphone or unmute it. Our disclosure and accreditation statements are on screen. And Molina Healthcare and Blue Cross Blue Shield New Mexico do offer reimbursements for your case consultations that you bring to us. That's a big part of Adolescent Health Initiative, and I believe, Jeannie, you're going to talk about that in just a moment, a little bit, because we do have a couple of specific dates that we have set aside for that for AHI. And you can be reimbursed up to $150 from Molina and about $75 from Blue Cross, so just keep that in mind. Looks like everyone can hear now. We do also offer these courses on our online learning platform called Moodle. That's through UNM. Go to our website and through online learning, that's where all the information is there, or you can contact me, Kevin Werling, or Michelle Widener for more information on that. And you can receive CME certificates for those as well. And now's your chance to announce your name if you haven't already through the chat, or if you'd like to unmute. We'd love to hear your voice and where you're from, if you don't mind.
This is John Taranjo from School-Based Health in Mora, New Mexico.
This is Kevin. That's from Mora School-Based Health Center.
Hey guys.
Good morning.
Morning. Looks like people are typing in. So welcome everyone.
So I'll hand it over to Jeannie Dalen, and maybe we can go around the room and introduce everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you guys are typing in, letting us know who's here, we'll also go around the room and introduce. And I'll kind of save me for last.
Okay. My name is Andrea Anderson. I am a QI specialist here at Envision. I'm Allison Beneas. I'm a medical student.
Kirsten Bennett, pediatric dietitian here at Envision.
Kenna Sheik, pediatric resident.
I'm David Fitzgerald, one of the pediatric residents as well.
So we've got a great group today, and it is wonderful seeing everyone on camera. I'm so happy people are getting less shy about us being able to see you. Again, I think it does it provides for a really rich exchange when we're able to see you guys as well. So welcome everyone this morning. I actually am your presenter for today, and I am going to be talking about using motivational interviewing strategies to address the needs of our adolescents, and really in a way that we can use some quick, brief strategies for everyone. Just a real quick announcement though before we get started with today's talk is we were just talking in here about case consultation cases coming up. And just to remind everyone, as part of the Adolescent Health Initiative New Mexico certificate, we invite everyone to submit a case, and that way you can get some very personal, detailed information about a particular case that has been either difficult for you or a typical type of client or patient that you see in your practice. And the best part about this is that there's going to be, you can ask questions either in general or towards a specific provider, because on case consultation days, we're going to have experts in the field really be here to help answer and really lend some personal thought to each one of the cases. So it could be in pediatric nutrition. We're going to have nurse practitioners, doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for you. Just to let you know, that that date is going to pop up pretty quickly. And what's most helpful for us is if you can get your case consultations in early. Not only will that slot you to be able to come, like, kind of first come first serve on those days, because we actually are giving ourselves 2 hours for that case consultation. So it makes sure that you get in early, but it also allows the providers to really do some thoughtful thinking about your case beforehand. So the quicker that you can get that in, I think the more richer those case consultations will be, and I think it's a nice opportunity. So just something for you guys to think about. So again, I'm Jeannie Dalen. I'm your moderator or facilitator for the Adolescent Health Initiative. I'm going to be talking to you guys today again about motivational interviewing. I tend to think of this hour as a crash course in MI, and of course what I want to do is for us just to always go over the review of MI principles and really just talk about the spirit of MI, because I think once you understand what the spirit is and what we're trying to accomplish when using this type of technique or interviewing process with adolescents, it really can help you understand how to develop your own style. And then always, I want to go ahead and give you some appropriate strategies that can help increase commitment to change in adolescence, but especially when short on time, because one of the things that I hear very often from providers such as yourselves is that, MI sounds wonderful. I would love to be able to do it, but I ain't got the time to be doing this. And so what we're going to try to focus on today is some quick but nice strategies that you can use, and that even if you don't have time in the actual consultation, you can take it home kind of as a homework assignment or something that, kind of for future thinking. And I always like to highlight specific team tips that in my work with adolescents have worked particularly well for me. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing in the next hour. Please interrupt if the questions come up, let me know, and if not, we'll get started and have time for questions at the end as well. So I kind of think of it as like this health provider dilemma, this physician dilemma, and I think we've all been there. So many of the patient populations that we see are presenting with chronic illnesses that we know are directly related to lifestyle and behaviors. Yet everyone kind of feels unable to improve their conditions. And often what adolescents should do is very obvious to us as health providers. We're trained to know what the consequences are of the behaviors that are out there. Losing the weight, stop smoking, taking drugs. But what is always not so obvious, and what we're not actually taught in our health provider health education model, is where adolescents are on their journey towards change and why they're so reluctant to take the next step. So with motivational interviewing, we really think of this, it's a different or a new way of working with adolescents, where we're actually trying to incorporate not only the shoulds, the information that we're able to give, the treatment planning, but really seeing the where and the why of where they're at in terms of change. And I talk a lot, and I always want to remind people that some of the worst behaviors that we all kind of know that there's certain behaviors that we do that could use some tweaking, or that we know have the potential for negative consequences for our health. But everything has its pros and its cons, and even the worst behaviors that we engage in, there's something of benefit that we actually get from that. And that's why a lot of times people we hold on to the behaviors that we do, and can be a little bit more difficult for change. So it's really MI you can be thought of as a conversation. It's no magic wand. You're not trying to do some specific technique to brainwash people into changing. You're just really having a conversation with people and meeting people where they're at to just strengthen their inherent motivation for and commitment to change. We tend to do in our health provider traditional model, we tend to focus on the opposite of MI. And it comes from a place of caring. We actually want to see our patients and our clients healthy. But what we tend to do, we focus on what a patient should be doing. We should all over them. We're quick to offer solutions and information. But we have to remember, in human behavior, information does not equal motivation. Those are two very separate things. And information that can be incorporated to help with motivation, but they're two separate things. What we have to be particularly careful of is much of the information that we give patients to help them, that we think to help them to change, is using fear-based information. If you don't change, you're going to get diabetes and die early. You're going to lose that foot if you keep eating junk food and having sodas. If you don't stop smoking, you're going to get lung cancer. So we try to typically use the fear-based to kind of scare the bejesus into people to actually change, because we want them to be healthy. But what we don't understand is we actually create an environment called psychological reactance, where people, and especially our rebellious teenagers, will argue actually more forcefully for the other side when someone else reinforces one side. So every time that we come across, when we don't even realize we're giving advice, we're trying to teach our patients, persuade, counsel, argue, we're actually kind of boomeranging it, where they actually will start forcefully arguing for the other side. Psychological reactance. And we're going to watch a video that shows this actually in action. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to force our patient to take the opposite side of the argument, because you're actually inviting them to actually take the other side when you just focus on this shoulds and fear-based approach to motivation. So what I want to do is, one of my favorite videos is actually a old Mad TV video with Bob Newhart, and it's actually a comedy skit, but I think it is one of the best kind of visuals for us to think about what we actually do. And so let's take a look at this clip, and what I want you to really pay attention to is how the client or the patient reacts to how Bob is treating her. Let's take a look.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Kyle referred me.
Oh, yes. Fear of being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well, tell
What?
me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive, and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say two simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so.
Well, I don't make change.
Then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! What are you, nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say.
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. And there's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! I mean, how are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Kat?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
Right.
Are you ready? Mm-hmm. All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box.
So again, that was a pretty silly little skit, but I think the principles are an excellent idea about, what our encounters usually are with patients. And so any thoughts or comments from what you guys saw in terms of it being silly? I think that's what we do, is we have so little time with patients that we really truly come across as just saying, well, stop it. What's the problem? Do you want to be sick? Do you want to lose a foot? Just stop these behaviors and lose the weight. And as you can see, what happened on the other side is she really didn't like it. And so when you think about it, is that person really likely to come back to actually work on a treatment plan with you or work on change? Probably not. And so this is just a nice version that, to really think about yourself when you're in what your work with patients and clients, to really kind of try to take a step back and not move into that stop it kind of approach, because we tend to easily go to that when we try to work with patients with our traditional education model. So instead, what we think about, let's think about what it is we're trying to work with motivation. And I think for the longest time, we actually felt that, people were either motivated to change or they weren't. It was a little bit of this dichotomous variable. But what we're actually finding is that motivation can be modified. It's not a static attribute, and it absolutely fluctuates. And what's fascinating is that motivation can be influenced by us, by our provider style. So we actually have a lot more control and a lot more power in encounters with our patients than we think. What they're finding is that style is one of the most important and most often ignored variable for predicting patient outcomes. And how you come across in the room accounts for more of the variance in motivation for where that person is willing to change than what's going on with the patient many times. Just basic kind of traits of genuineness, warmth, empathy, respect. So basically, just with MI, to just think of it as that's just our task. That our job is to help elicit and enhance the motivation that's inherent in all of our clients. All it really comes down to is helping patients recognize for themselves that behavior is not in their best interest, and that feeling confident to change, which we're going to be spending a little bit of time on this morning because it's often overlooked, that self-efficacy. And then we can get to the part for developing a plan for change, where we excel right now in terms of our education, our expertise. So it goes back to conversation, establishing that relationship. If they feel connected, they're more likely to come back. And I gave this talk a couple of weeks ago to some nurse practitioners and some physician assistants. And one of the things they told me was, but I don't want to feel like I have to get all psychological with my patient. Like, I'm not a psychologist. That's not my job. My job is just to go in there and to give them dietary change. I don't want to know what's going on with them. But the point is, you can't separate the two. You can't separate the person from the behavior that you want them to change. And so MI has a purpose. You're not opening up a can of worms. You don't have to ask them about their childhood, as Bob put it. Oh, no, we don't go there. But you have to at least think about it, and that you have to see what's going on in that person's life to be able to even implement the changes that you want them to see. So there is a particular purpose, but it's more collaborative than confrontational. Confrontational is stop it in whichever way or form that we typically give information. But collaborative is we honor where that person is, no matter where they're at in the change, and that we're honoring their perspective rather than trying to impose this reality through fear-based information that the person's not going to see or admit to, and will actually start arguing the other side anyway. I kind of think of it, you guys, dancing versus wrestling. And as you know, it can be exhausting work for us as providers when we see patients come in time after time and not making change or progress. It can actually be hard for us. So why MI was very special for me and why I started using it more is because it actually helped with my burnout factor and made me feel like, okay, this is really what my job is, leading the horse to water, but it's going to be up to them to change. And so I think not only is it very helpful for the patient, but it can be very helpful for us as providers for the long-term work that we do. Autonomy versus authority. You as the doctor, the physician, the dietitian, whichever, you have information that you can give and share, but it's truly up to that person, from the person's right and their capacity for self-direction, facilitating an informed choice. Adolescents make their own choices. Regardless of the information that's presented to them, it always comes down to them. And this is the truth for adults too. And so we're trying to evoke resources for motivation that already reside within the person. And this is an important point. They're not lacking, not necessarily, key knowledge for change to occur. For many of the adolescent populations we work with, especially in this age of internet and information at our fingertips, most of us know exactly what our behavior leads to. There's hardly an adolescent out there that would say, drugs, like I don't understand why is meth bad for me, or I don't understand why smoking. Now, sometimes it's a little different with marijuana. And so sometimes, depending on what it is, there is education that we can give our patients. There is a way to work with them so they understand exactly what they're going up against. But they make their own choices in the end. And so we're all much better off working with that energy. So I have one more video for you guys today, and then we'll get to strategies. But I love this video because it shows it shows a study in New York where they went up to smokers and they used a typical kind of stop it kind of strategy, and then you see what happens versus when they go back and actually ask more of a MI style, asking influential questions. So let's take a look at this one, and we'll see what you guys think.
Okay, full disclosure, today's title is an overstatement, but only a little.
Those of us with a bad habit have probably heard all the guilt, pleading, and logic for change a million times. We're prepared to resist and combat every logical or emotional attack.
Especially smokers. More than most any addiction, they've seen the anti-smoking ads, the horrific images of cancerous lungs. Everybody's told them 100 times to just stop. And does it work?
Of course not. So let's look for BS you can use. All right, first let's find some smokers and a couple of Confederates. In the control condition, we'll have Cole and Josh try the traditional lecture approach.
Excuse me. Hey, you know smoking is bad for you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah?
Would you like to know where you can get some help? If you want to quit, then...
Hardly any takers.
Thank you.
90% of the smokers responded resentfully. Just under half even took the paper when it was forced into their hand. So reminding people of something they already know but don't want to think about didn't work.
Now here comes the BS you can use. This time we'll have our intrepid Confederates try something different. We'll replace a tired lecture with an influential question. This time, Cole approaches the subject with a fake cigarette and asks for a light.
How about a light? Why not? Why?
Don't breathe. You like to move, go fast?
This is fascinating. The adults are now telling the boy why he shouldn't smoke.
It gets even better. Now that the smoker's making the anti-smoking arguments, the kids turn it back to the smoker with an influential question.
So if you care about us, what about you?
Just look at the body language this time as compared to the control condition. You don't see defensiveness, you see openness.
Exactly. In this condition, close to 90% of subjects not only lectured the boys about the evils of smoking, but committed to trying to quit themselves. And it gets even better. One of them saw the boys later and came back to continue the rant.
Take it from me. Every time somebody brings it to you, or you see it, or you see somebody smoking, remember my word. It's not good. But I will quit. Sure, I have to. Otherwise, I will die here.
Now, the skeptical scientist in me wants to ask, so was that motivation to do anything?
Good question. When Ovi and Mather conducted the experiment in Bangkok, calls to the quit line actually went up 40% on the day of the experiment.
Wow.
We don't know if they actually quit, but we do know that their motivation lasted past the interaction.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Why did that work?
I see a few things going on here, but let's focus on one of them. When you're trying to influence people who need motivation and not information, don't offer more information.
Your only hope is to avoid provoking what psychologists call reactance. The best way to do that is not with speeches, but with questions. Give them a safe environment to explore motivations they already have.
Exactly. The kids' approach allowed the smoker to feel emotionally safe, which allowed them to acknowledge their own ambivalence about their habit.
So I have to reintroduce them to values they already believe in by tricking them with a cute kid or a puppy.
Close. Stop forcing them to take the wrong side of the argument by lecturing them. Instead, use questions to help them explore their own motivations at their own pace. And it works too. Go ahead, try it at home.
I'm Joseph Grenny.
And I'm David Maxfield.
And that's all the BS for today. Sharpen your behavioral science.
So questions, comments on that video? Out there? You know, it's interesting because when in giving this talk, I primarily work with adolescent populations, and it's amazing how you know, a lot of the videos that are out there on YouTube, there is not a lot out there that actually shows motivational interviewing with adolescents. So I recognize in this particular video that it's adults out on the street. But what they're actually finding is that adolescents have that same process that they go through too. It's just their adolescent brain thinks a little bit differently about it. And so that's what we're going to talk this last half of today's hour, is using MI kind of in a way that an adolescent, you know, what does an adolescent really gravitate to, that we can open this conversation and start talking about change. Just as a quick reminder, I'm sure many of you guys who have been exposed to MI recognize the stages of change model, which again, I think just reiterates the fact that change is more of a circular, not a linear, dichotomous process. And so that we really go through these actual different stages where we go from not thinking about it to really contemplating change. Then we prepare, and then we get into action. And the unfortunate part is, again, our kind of stop it behaviors or our treatment planning, we tend to go focus directly to the action phase without thinking about these other stages. So that's what we kind of need to do. The contemplation stage is the most important, and it's actually where we most likely see about 80 to 85% of our patients are more in this stage. It's where we begin, you know, we acknowledge that there may be a little bit of a problem in our adolescents. They may begin to think about solving it, but they're far from making that commitment. They're not exactly sure how they want to go about this or even if they want to. And this is where people feel the most ambivalence about taking action. And ambivalence is a word with MI that I want to help become your friend. Ambivalence is actually our friends as providers, and not something to shy away or try to beat out of someone by saying stop it. Thinking about quitting the behavior, though, is just not the same thing as quitting, and so we have to prepare. So the number one tip that I really, again, want to reiterate and say is that our job is to normalize that. Make that kid understand that it is okay to have pros and cons or think one way about it. So many adults in their lives are trying to tell them what to do and how to do it, what's the right way, what's the wrong way. But adolescence is actually a time where they're trying to figure out things for themselves. They're starting to make choices for themselves. And so our job as providers is to help facilitate that by just normalizing that everyone has conflicting feelings, uncertainties, reservations, not sure what to do. And so you just even saying that many adolescents have been in this same state, they feel the same way, and they've experienced strong ambivalence. But just because you experience ambivalence doesn't mean that we can't figure something out together. We can't figure out the next step of what's going to make most sense for you. And so just normalizing that, I have found in the room, it's a very subtle, and I think a lot of these MI approaches are really subtle, but in a way, it really changes the energy in a room very easy. It can be very powerful. And so I always say, you know, this is okay. We can work with this. And I always like to remind ourselves that if we ignore this stage and we go straight to, okay, you're smoking and you really need to quit, stop it, here's your treatment plan. And many times adolescents will want to please adults or they'll want to rebel. You'll totally get the two. But the ones that want to please, they'll shake their head and say, okay, and then whatever you give them goes into the trash as soon as they leave the room. And I've actually had adolescents tell me that's exactly what they do. So we can't ignore this stage, because what happens is you get that brief maybe course of action, that New Year's Eve resolution first week, followed by a rapid return back to the old behaviors. So it behooves us to kind of really work on this with them and give them a little bit of time to prepare. And so, well, how do we do that? How do we actually help increase motivation with adolescents, recognizing that we don't have a lot of time with them? Many times we see them for multiple visits, but sometimes not so much. And so there's actually a way that to kind of strategies that can increase commitment that I think could be time sensitive, and also just more about our style and how we work with them are 4 things that we're going to talk about. One is just changing all that external motivation that got them to your office talking about what's inside their internal motivation. And that's through clarifying values. Clarifying values and barriers is such a strong, powerful technique. And also giving them a sense of increasing their self-efficacy, the competence. Because if one thing we know with adolescents, it's a scary time. And they are learning about themselves. And they're not exactly sure how to go about doing many things in life, much less health behavior change. And so one of the biggest jobs, I think, for adolescents is us giving them the power and the confidence and empowerment to feel like they really can do this. And then we're going to end talking a little bit about goal sampling, meaning instead of giving large treatment plans, breaking down plans and goals into little small chunks that adolescent brains can really handle. All right, so external motivators is really just that. It occurs when adolescents are motivated to perform that behavior or engage in activity in order to earn a reward or a punishment. Going to the doctors because your parents are making you. Taking meds to avoid being reprimanded by your mom or your dad. It's basically doing something because someone told you to. Well, adolescents have to do that their whole life. Everyone is telling them what to do. So this is just one more thing that they're having to deal with. But we have to remember, adolescents do not resonate to long-term consequences. Their brain is thinking in the next 3 days, the party on the weekend, the test they have next Monday. So they can't think about, gosh, I'm taking meds, or I don't understand, like, why, who cares if I smoke pot this week, or who cares if I don't take my medicine? And so many times we try to use these external motivators to get them to keep continuing to do it. But what if we switch it around, and that's the heart of MI, is it involves actually engaging in that behavior because it's personally rewarding. Because the adolescent wants something for themselves, performing an activity for your own sake. But what we have to understand is for adolescents, that may be getting ready to do the basketball game on Saturday. It has to be short term. So when you ask, have you ever asked an adolescent, many of them, what do you want to do when you grow up? This is like, it's like, what? Like, I just want to know what I'm eating for breakfast tomorrow morning. And so we have to think about that when we explore internal motivation. And what I find is when you start working with adolescent values, asking them, what is it that they care about? It's deciding that you want to feel better in your body, committing to self-care in order to enjoy playing with your nieces, getting more energy to do the things you love to do, looking good in your prom dress. These are all things that I've heard from adolescents. Now, it looks like there's a great comment that just came up from that is what I always thought of MI. It's a little tricky or deviant on our part to get them to change our minds. And absolutely, I think that's an important comment, because many times people are like, well, I just need to use this MI as my magic wand and I'm going to trick them into it. But absolutely, there's no such thing. You really can't trick people into change. You can wrestle them into change and try to should all over them and say, stop it. But in the end, people will always make their choices. So actually with MI, you're just kind of stepping back and letting them figure it out for themselves, but asking them questions that really get them to think about what's already kind of going through their mind. So I think that's a good comment. So we're looking at values, but just to remember that values are short term. So how do we strengthen that? How do we get people talking with kids, especially, about their values and what they care about? First of all, you show curiosity. Many people love to talk about things that are going on in their lives. And if you ask the question, adolescents will respond to you. Don't wait for them to talk spontaneously about troubles or capabilities. We know that adolescents are not as comfortable talking about that. So we have to go to them. We have to let them know that it's okay and it's safe and they can do that here with you. And to remember that adolescents, even though they're seeing you for a health visit, for something that's going on physically many times, they've got several areas of their lives that it matters. School, sports, love, and that's where the values lie. They're not going to, especially adolescents, I mean, we feel like we're never going to die when we're 16 or 17. Negative consequences? Like, what are you talking about? But school, sports, love, things that hit them on a daily basis, that's where their values come from. So if you can identify what that kiddo is good at and what they care about, that actually makes a case for why they want to take care of themselves. Not to take care of themselves just because the doctor told them that they can have diabetes when they're 60. It doesn't work. And so we have to see what's hitting them and what's resonating with them on their day-to-day lives, from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. And all kids, no matter what, are good at something and care about something, whether it's cars, music, art. And it's amazing how so many times those are the things that they care about. They don't want to jeopardize. And so if you can bring that behavior to how it affects their day-to-day life, that's where we get them. That's where they can understand and join you. Again, this is just kind of the whole thing. We have to remember the teenage brain thinks differently. Things that are not as important to us as we get older, we have to remember are important to them. Again, girlfriends, boyfriends, music, I mean, anything that you can think of, I just love this cartoon because it's so true. Yeah, the slam the door reflex. But it's just, again, we have to meet them where they're at. We can't give them the consequences that we're worried about. It has to resonate with their day-to-day life. And even if it's not important to us, it's very important to them, and that's where all the motivation could be to be had. All right, so one of the easiest, simplest tools and powerful tools that you can use when you have short time to start thinking, generating this conversation, so you don't just always have to feel like you're just going into a room blinded, is using the importance ruler. And I'm sure many of you guys have seen this who have seen MI before, but it really is a great go-to. I have 10 minutes with this person to really start having this conversation. And what the importance ruler is, exactly as you can either print these out on Google, you can print this one. There's 100 different types of images for importance ruler. You can actually get out a ruler or just use even a piece of paper, whichever works for you. But really you just say, on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being not important at all to 10 being very important, what number would you give yourself right now about this behavior? Smoking, drug use, what have you, unprotected sex. What you do is you get them to pick a number, and that's to start with, and it gives them something concrete that they can start this conversation with. And what's interesting about the importance ruler is you focus on what's right. So you focus on, you picked a 4, why not a 2? Because many times we'll see the 4 and go, crap, now what do I do? Like, this person doesn't care, doesn't want to change. But you use the information no matter where they're at. You meet them where they're at. And if you start with, why did you pick a 4 and not a 2? Then you're asking them, well, because I know that it's a little bit important to me. That's change talk. They're already arguing for change instead of arguing against. And then we're asking, all right, well, you're at a 4 right now. That's great. What would it take to get you to a 5, a 6, a 7? And you're starting a conversation, and it's a number that kids, for some reason, can actually hold on to. Numbers actually mean something to them. Questions that I actually keep in my intake folders when I'm with kiddos and adults, actually, for that matter, is just useful questions, different ways that you can ask the kiddos. Why have you given yourself such a high score on importance? What stops you from moving from a 4 to a 5? What are the good things? So adolescents light up in a room when you start by asking what are the things that you like about that behavior. And the reason why is because every adult in the universe is telling them, no, 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 no. And so when you start, and they're ready for you to do it too. And so when you start with what are the good things about X, it's like you can see them visibly relax and want to tell you, well, hear my side. And so I work a lot with adolescents with drug use issues. And it can be really hard. As a provider, you kind of get that tick in your eye when you're like, what are the good things about meth? How can there be any good things? Why would we even want to ask that question? But kids will sit there and go, all right, let me tell you why, like, hear my side. It makes me feel great. Well, especially with marijuana, it's more often about marijuana. It makes me feel relaxed. I don't have to stress out so much about my teenagers. School scares me, and it helps me to focus in school. I'm so scared I'm going to fail. So you get to hear them. You get to hear it. And the fact is that if you can ask them what's good about it, guess what? When you ask, what are some of the things you don't like about it, they're more likely now to tell you, okay, all right, I'll give you the other side now. Yeah, you're right. I'm noticing that I'm getting really tired and not doing my homework. All right, yeah, I'm getting in trouble at school and people are looking at me like I'm the bad kid. It's really expensive. I'm getting in trouble with my mom. But if you ask that question first, you most of the time don't get as rich of information because, again, the psychological reaction. Everyone's telling me what to do. You can ask it about like what concerns they have about the behavior and what would have to happen. You know, what would have to happen for it to become much more important? It's getting them to think about the future. Because even if they're at a 3 or a 4, things can happen that changes that motivation. And kids do think about that. Kids do think about the short-term consequences. One of the things that I always love to leave with, one of the last questions, is if you were to change, what would it be like? And that's because most people, we just think of the day and trying to get through our day, especially adolescents. You know, they've got a lot to contend with. And if we can have them help envision the life that they do want, that is so powerful. And it leads on a positive note, and it leads to them really thinking about, okay, what do I want in my life? So again, this is really quick things that you can use. I've actually had kiddos just take that ruler home and ask those questions and then come back and talk about it, or I followed up on a text. So there's ways that you can use the rulers, hopefully, like, you know, in ways that are quick. Another thing to give you guys is what's called the decisional balance. And this I've done with kids where I've asked the questions, and I've also given them it if you feel like, you know, they're cognitively ready to send it home with them as well as just something to think about if you don't have the time. And really on that, you're just going, you know, starting at the top and talking about, you know, what are the benefits of changing? Again, it's kind of a rift on that importance ruler versus what are the benefits of staying the same? Meaning, what are you getting out of this right now? Because every behavior, no matter how negative it is, has positive consequences in some way for that person. There's something that we get out of it. Then you go to, well, what are the drawbacks to changing? And this is an important question because what it gets at is the barriers. What does that kiddo think is going to get in the way of changing? And barriers leads to lower self-efficacy. Well, I can't because then I'm not going to have any friends. You know, my friends are all I have, and we use smoking as a way of bonding. Now what am I going to do? Those are important things to discuss because those are things that can be worked out. Those are the barriers that we need to address and help get support on so change actually is able to happen, because barriers stop us in our tracks. And then again, what are the drawbacks though if you stay the same? Reminding them that there's drawbacks. If I stay the same, I may not graduate. I may end up, you know, getting into crime or something because I'm noticing my friends are doing a lot more crazy behaviors. So it's just another way of getting them to think about the pros and the cons and what are the barriers. One thing I want to spend just a few minutes on that I think we completely forget about, that we're cheerleaders for the kiddos in our work. One of our biggest jobs is actually to empower them because so much of their life is not empowered. So many people are telling them what to do, when to do it. Increasing self-efficacy is one of the most critical determinants of change. And really it just means that we believe we can do it, that we're actually in control of a part of our life. I can't do that, that's beyond my powers, versus, okay, that would be easy, I think I can manage that. And what they're finding in the research is self-efficacy is one of the single most important factors for living a healthy lifestyle. It influences the choices we make, the effort we put forth in that, how long we persist when there's obstacles, because there's always the obstacles and barriers that come up to behavior change, and then actually how we feel about it. This is what we want our kids to look like. We want them to feel like they left your room going, I can do this, even if it's the smallest little thing that they're willing to do. And I just love this guy. And us as cheerleaders can be very important. Even just frankly saying you can do this, it's amazing what can happen in that relationship and that kiddo leaving your office. This is a fancy slide. Don't worry about it. I'm going to talk you through it. But basically, there's 4 sources of self-efficacy that we can think about doing. The first one is inactive mastery, fancy word for just performance, meaning if we're able to perform something and succeed at it, we're more likely to perform it again. And so this is going to get us when we talk about goal sampling and our treatment planning, because we want people to take a plan and a treatment that they can do. Vicarious experience. This means that we can tell stories about what other kids have done. We are hardwired for stories as individuals, and nothing more like an adolescent. Adolescents love to hear stories about other people, other things, and so it can feel very isolating when we feel like we're the only ones struggling with the behavior. And you know, the adolescent brain, they're even more so. It's just me. No one knows what it's like to be me. So when we're able to tell stories that you're not alone, there's many adolescents who have gone through this. There's adolescents who have tried this and tried that. It's very much a, well, if they can do it, I can too. So tell stories. Give them situations and ideas about what other people have done. Verbal persuasion. Just saying, I think you can do this. I know you can do this, is enough to pump them up. Knowing that someone else thinks we can do something helps us to be able to do it. And lastly, physiological arousal. This is one we never think about, and this is why I love to give this slide for us to think about. We forget that any behavior change, any activity many times comes with some physiological arousal. And as humans, we don't like that. We try to stay away from feeling stressed, fearful, a little scared, heartbeat going up, the whole public speaking thing that we talked about. But we have to remember that just because you're feeling physiologically, doesn't mean you can't do it. And many times we take the signs of our negative emotional states to say, well, we can't do this. But if you remind people that you can feel the fear and do it anyway, it's like, oh yeah, I can sit here being totally freaked out doing motivational interviewing, but I'm talking. And so physiological arousal is something we often ignore, but that we have to normalize. And that's helpful too for kiddos. All right, so last one is goal sampling and experimenting. The more hopeful adolescents feel about future success, obviously, the more likely they are to follow through. That means those initial goals should be short-term, measurable, and realistic. But we don't do that. We give treatment plans that are a page to 2 pages to 3 pages long. We want them to do multiple things in different areas of their lives, and no one is able to do that at first. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. Meaning, we know where we want to get our adolescents to. We know the behaviors we'd like them to engage in to get to optimal health. But sometimes good and little things can be just as powerful and can add up. So one technique I want to share with you guys is actually something that is not at all MI. I actually use this in my work as a psychologist. But it's just, again, another way for the adolescent brain to think about goals. And it's called dot span path. And again, we go directly to path, where we want them to do something permanently for the rest of their life. But we have to recognize that actually it's little, small, everyday baby steps that add up. And so what we think about them as dots, doing something once. Then we try to increase that to like a span of time, doing something for a period of time, knowing with adolescents that that might be 3 days or 5 days. A kiddo is much more likely to say, all right, I'll try not smoking at one party this week. All right, I won't go to fast food restaurant for lunch one time this week. Those are much more thinking I can do that than don't ever eat at Taco Bell ever again for the rest of your life. I have kids come in all the time saying, Dr. Dalen, I did 3 dots this week, high five. And so kids can understand that kind of language. The dot span path is just a way for them to think about things going in little baby steps where they can be successful. Okay, so I know that you guys, this is a really crash course in MI. Again, these are just kind of 4 things to be thinking about. And just to kind of give tips to kind of summarize what we've done, and then I'll see if there's any questions from you guys, is number 1, don't rush into decision making. That is the number 1 thing. We don't have to have every encounter be exactly perfect from what you want to do. It's better to meet that person where they're at and give them something very little than to give them a 3-page treatment plan and think you're done. Emphasize that they're in control, which is what adolescents want and need. You are the best judge of what will be best for you. And if you can examine options rather than a single course of action, be creative with your treatment plans. Have a few options and have kids decide which option they want to try, what they want to do. We're hardwired for stories. So describe what other adolescents have done in similar situations. Adolescents love that. Always present information in that kind of neutral, non-personal manner that authority in us can really come out, and that really, really doesn't set well with adolescents. I said, make sure that families understand that resolutions of change often break down. This is when I do family work, but this can also be for the adolescent. One of the most important things is they shouldn't avoid future contact with you if things go wrong, because adolescents don't want to get punished. And so many times I've even had in my groups, well, I didn't come to group because I didn't want you to be mad at me because I didn't do the homework. That's how adolescents think. They want to avoid punishment. But let them know that this is okay, ambivalence, the pros and the cons. Things aren't always going to work out. So come to me and we'll talk about it. Put that at ease. And remember that, again, the inability to reach a decision to change is not a failed consultation. Planting the seeds is what MI does. Planting the seeds, getting kids to think about it in a way that feels comfortable and safe is much more powerful than just saying, hey, this is where you need to get to. Here's your 3 pages. Good luck. And for you to just expect fluctuations and commitment to change, it's always okay to come back and see where kids are at, because different consequences, different contexts are going to make change for them different at different points in our lives, just like it is for us. So that is like a crazy, I know, crash course in MI. And well, again, I just want to open it up for any comments, questions. The slides are always available, and I also put the YouTube links up as well for the videos if you want to like show colleagues or just be able to look at it back at a different time. And we'll continue, for facilitating. I'll bring up some MI strategies as we do cases now through AHI over the next few weeks. We'll talk about maybe different ways to bring MI in. And then, of course, for your case consultations, that's a great time as well to kind of get some ideas about MI for the patients that you're using and working with on an everyday basis. So happy that you guys were all able to join us. Thank you to everyone. Everyone's doing a great job on filling out those satisfaction surveys. Those are very helpful to us. So keep them coming. And then we will see you guys next Wednesday again. Same time, same place here at 8 o'clock. Thanks.